and welcome to this video. This is specially designed to explain the Quebec Education Program, otherwise known as the QEP, or in French, the Programme de Formation de Québec, PFEQ, for new ESL teachers. So anyone who is new to teaching English as a second language in Quebec for the first time. All right, let's get started. First thing that you need to know is that in Quebec, all educational curriculum, or curricula because it's Latin, are competency based. Okay, so it's not based on content. Since the early 2000s, there was an educational reform and everything is now based on competencies. So you're going to hear this word a lot, competencies. And competencies just means skills. So skills over content. What skills do students need in the 21st century? So the focus of all the programs is the kind of skills that you're going to help your students develop in math class, science class, French class, geography. All these different classes are focusing on skills, which means that the teachers need to design lesson plans and consider what content they need to help students develop these skills. And as well, they need to think about the kind of evaluation to test your students' skills. So in English, for example, if one of the skills is speaking, what kind of content are you going to create that will help your students practice speaking in English? And how will you evaluate their ability to speak in English? Just as an example, and this is pretty helpful for you, as future teachers, while you're in teacher education, you also have 13 competencies that you are going to be evaluated on. So they're here. This was put out in 2021, which means that all of your classes in teacher education, your assignments, your exams, your practicums, all of these are designed to develop these 13 competencies. So you're going to see these written out, hopefully, in your syllabus and in the assignments all the way through. It should say something like, this assignment is planned to help you develop competency 5, competency 2, or competency 3. And at certain points during your 4 years here, you'll be asked to put together a portfolio that demonstrates your development of these competencies. So just as a quick overview, there are some fancy pants names you're going to see on the left. So for example, competency 1 is act as a cultural facilitator when carrying out duties. But if you go through the program, it's actually, these are my words for it, know the curriculum and be aware of your own culture and ideas and background. So be a little bit critical of your own stance and how that translates to students. Number 2 is essentially being able to communicate effectively, especially mastering English. 3 is all about lesson planning. So how well can you lesson plan considering the needs of your students? 4 will be about teaching your lessons. So how do you carry out lessons that you've planned? 5 is evaluating your students' skills. Remember, your competencies. How can you evaluate your students' competencies? 6 is your skill at managing classes. Don't need that. 7 is teaching to diverse students, so students with different kinds of needs in your classroom. 8, I love this one, it's brand new, is making students love to learn. 9 is how good are you at being a team player? So this one is obviously developed during your practicum, as well as competency 10, being a part of your larger school community. Competency 11 is how well can you commit to your own professional development. So this is my personal favorite. I'm going to be asking you to do a lot of reflecting and critical thinking on your own development, where you're at, and some of the things you need to work on. Competency 12 is about being able to use technology in your teaching and in your classes. And finally, competency 13 is about being ethical, professional, and fair to everybody. So those are the competencies that you yourself will be developing and being evaluated on as a future teacher. So just to let you know then, so those are your 13 competencies, but the program that you're going to be teaching, the English Second Language curriculum in Quebec itself, has 3 competencies. And this is a page directly from the PFEQ, the Programme de Formation d'Éducation de Québec. So there are 3 competencies. The first one is to interact orally in English. You're going to see in the diagram, this is takes up the most amount of space, and it's also competency number 1, because in the program, this is what we're emphasizing. We really want the kids to be able to carry on a conversation in English. So that involves speaking, but also listening and understanding and responding. Competency number 2 is reinvests understanding. So whenever they read or watch or listen to something, they're able not only to understand, but use that information, either to read, either to speak or to write something later on, or to answer comprehension questions. So really broadens it beyond a little bit of reading. And the last one you're going to see, this is the smallest one, right? So competency number 3, the least amount of emphasis is on to write texts, and actually it's write and produces text. So you write all kinds of texts, but you will also be asking the students to produce things like media. So it's not accidental that they're numbered in this way, 1, 2, 3. Most important one, and the weight that's given the most, is being able to hold a conversation. The second one is being able to understand texts in their environment and use that information. And finally, writing texts. Okay, so that is really how the emphasis goes, which is maybe kind of the opposite to what a lot of you have experienced growing up learning a second language. So just to note, there is one exception to this rule of 3 competencies in the English second language program, and that is Cycle 1, otherwise known as Grade 1 and 2. For Grade 1 and 2, they only have 2 ESL competencies. And this kind of makes sense if you think about it, because in Grade 1 and 2, they haven't learned to write in their first language yet. So in English, we are not teaching them Competency 3. We are only teaching them speaking and understanding. To top it off, they flip it around. And again, they do this on purpose. You're going to see this is directly from the program. So in Cycle 1 in Grade 1 and 2, you're going to see here the biggest amount of emphasis is placed on on understanding of texts. And put yourself back in mind of a Grade 1 and 2 classroom. This makes sense, because what are you doing in a Grade 1 classroom? You are singing songs, reading stories, playing games. This is where a lot of the input in language happens. This is all about language acquisition. The students need to really hear and experience the language before they can start to speak it. And that follows the same way you learn your first language too. So act on understanding of text. The teacher will be singing songs and playing games, and if the students respond, it's showing that they understand what you're saying. So if the teacher says, put your hands on your head, the students put their hands on their head, they've understood. So that's the Competency 1 in Grade 1, okay, because it's the most important. Competency 2, to communicate orally in English. So the kids are you're giving them a couple of phrases and words. Hi, my name is, how are you? That kind of stuff. So that flips. And you're going to see as you go to Cycle 2 and 3 and beyond, so Grade 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, this flips around. And now interacting orally in English, being able to carry on a conversation and speak, becomes the most important competency, as we discussed earlier. So Competency 1 is interacting orally. Competency 2, reinvesting understanding of texts. And Competency 3, the least important, this is where all the grammar and spelling comes in, is Competency 3. Okay, so just to recap here, there are 5 sort of levels in elementary and secondary school. This is what we're training you for. So when you graduate, you will be able to teach all of these grades. So elementary Cycle 1, Grade 1 and 2, elementary Cycle 2, Grade 3 and 4, elementary Cycle 3, Grade 5 and 6, secondary Cycle 1, which is Grade 7 and 8, and secondary Cycle 2, Grade 9, 10, and 11. And it's important to understand the division because different programs correspond to each of these levels. So in elementary, there's only one program, English Second Language. Except for Cycle 3, when some schools introduce intensive English, so that's half the year usually in English and half the year in French. And newsflash, they're working on an enriched program for Grade 5 and 6, which is being piloted in 2022, 2023. In secondary, you'll see that there's a new program. So we have English Second Language and also EESL, And the extra E is for enriched. So enriched English as a second language. We call that ESL in the community. So you're going to hear people saying ESL or core English and ESL, which is enriched. Okay, so here's the next thing. So you have the different programs, and I've put in here the competencies. You're going to see again, competency 1 and 2 are different for that elementary grade 1 and 2, but for everyone else, even though the phrasing kind of differs a little bit, it's 3 competencies. Oral interaction, being able to hold on a conversation. Competency 2, being able to understand texts and be able to do something with that information. And then competency 3. Okay. Sorry, I'm late for another meeting. All right. So, finally, there are 3 different kinds of documents that you'll need to be familiar with, and I've put these on the Moodle site for you. So there's the Quebec curriculum documents. So each one of the grade levels has their own curriculum competencies. It explains the competencies, broad areas of learning, lots of stuff. We'll go into it bit by bit. Then there's the progression of learning. And historically what happened is that the government put out the program, the Quebec education program, with its competency based, and people freaked out and they said, where's the content? What do we teach? When do we teach it? So a few years later, they put out the progression of learning, which really guides teachers in what kind of content they should be teaching year by year. And we'll get time to go through that as well. The final document they put out, which you'll need to be familiar with, is the framework of evaluation. So what are we evaluating? How much is each thing worth? What to look for? Okay, so all of those are on Moodle, and we'll be going through those together. That is the curriculum. So this is just a little summary for you. The different cycles, the different programs, the different competencies, and the different documents that exist. Thanks for watching. As always, if there's anything you need to know, don't hesitate to ask.